Let's begin with the foundations. Welcome to another lecture. I am Professor Alexei, and today we will examine Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice, with the composure of a seminar and, I hope, the warmth of a community gathering. With me is Priyanka, whose questions are often the most efficient route to clarity.
Hi everyone, thank you Professor. I'm Priyanka, and I'm excited to learn more about how a single festival can carry theology, history, and everyday community life all at once.
To frame our discussion, Eid al-Adha is one of the two principal Islamic festivals, paired with Eid al-Fitr. It falls on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah in the Islamic lunar calendar, and its observances extend through the Tashriq days that follow. In essence, it commemorates Abraham's readiness to sacrifice his son in obedience to God, and the divine substitution of a ram, emphasizing devotion, mercy, and communal responsibility. The festival coincides with the culmination of the Hajj pilgrimage, so what pilgrims perform in and around Mecca on that day runs in parallel with global prayers and charity.
Maybe the best place to begin is by asking a simple question. What actually happens during Eid al-Adha for most people? I think of three elements: the special prayer after sunrise and before the midday zuhur, the takbir recitations that bracket the days, and, for those who can afford it, the ritual animal sacrifice, the udhiyah or qurban, with meat shared across family, friends, and the poor.
Exactly. And in slightly more technical terms, we note the festival's legal and linguistic architecture. Udhiyah comes from a root conveying sacrificial slaughter, prominent in hadith-based jurisprudence, while qurban is related to nearness, signaling that the act is intended as drawing close to God and society. It's important to understand the vocabulary of Eid itself. The Arabic term appears once in the Quran, in a passage where Jesus requests a table as a festival and a sign, which intriguingly frames a feast as divine provision. As a linguistic aside, some scholars, including Arthur Jeffrey, have proposed that the term Eid might reflect borrowing from Syriac or Aramaic. Others hold to a native Arabic derivation via a root meaning recurrence. In this context, we observe how shared Semitic lexicons complicate tidy etymologies.
And the names travel with culture? Right. In Turkey, it's Kurban Bayramı. In parts of South and Central Asia, many say Eid al-Adha. And in Southeast Asia, people might say Hari Raya Haji. In Bangladesh, Qurban-e-Eid foregrounds the sacrifice in the name itself.
Moving forward, why does this matter now? Eid al-Adha operationalizes communal equity by embedding charity into worship. The customary division of meat into thirds distributes nutrition, dignity, and social connection. The result is not merely celebratory, it is infrastructural, as it were. At the same time, there have been persistent historical misunderstandings, or more neutrally, divergences. Most notably, whether the son in the near-sacrifice narrative was Ishmael, as emphasized by Islamic tradition, or Isaac, as in the biblical account. This point touches lineage, ritual symbolism, and interfaith memory.
So yeah, moving on. Maybe a few basic facts to get our bearings. The date shifts each Gregorian year because the Hijri calendar is lunar, about 11 days shorter. And in a single year, countries might celebrate on 2 to 4 different civil dates due to local moon sighting differences. The prayer window is after sunrise and before zuhur, followed by a khutbah, with greetings like Eid Mubarak exchanged all around.
Indeed, to elaborate, Dhul Hijjah 9 is the day of Arafah for pilgrims, the devotional summit of Hajj. Eid itself is Dhul Hijjah 10, and the rites on that day for pilgrims include stoning at the Jamarat, along with Tawaf and Sa'i, continuing into the Tashriq days. In broader communities, the sacrifice is performed from Eid day through those days. Permissible animals include sheep, goats, cattle, and camels, meeting age and quality criteria from hadith and juristic consensus. It is worth noting that while the Quran narrates Abraham's trial and the substitution, the detailed sacrificial rulings are elaborated in hadith. This arguably illustrates how narrative frames and legal specifics interlock in Islamic law.
And on the ground, it looks very different by place. In Bangladesh, temporary cattle markets, the Haat, start up from the first day of Dhul Hijjah. Animals are decorated, and people in Dhaka travel back to their hometowns. In Pakistan, women often apply henna, kids get Eid. In the Middle East, there are traditional sweets. And in many African countries, there's a big emphasis on inviting friends and sharing meat. Across all this, the common theme is hospitality.
Speaking of scale, Bangladesh alone sacrifices on the order of several million animals, which implies a remarkable logistical capacity for transport, inspection, and rapid distribution. And, as an astronomer would remind us, Eid migrates through all seasons across a roughly 33-year cycle, so communities adapt to heat, cold, and daylight variance. At the level of public timekeeping, some countries confirm the month by local sighting, others accept regional testimony, and in Saudi Arabia, the Supreme Judicial Council announces official dates, while a pre-calculated calendar, the al-Qura, is used for planning. Critics sometimes note its close alignment with announcements, and officials emphasize that final confirmation rests on reported sighting. Clearly, determining sacred time remains a living conversation. Before we get to the complexities, a brief personal note. As a mathematician who studies structure and proof, I find religious festivals fascinating precisely because they couple invariant ideas, devotion, gratitude, with highly local implementations, recipes, queues at markets, and the geometry of an Eidgah field. It is, if you will, a theorem with infinitely many corollaries.
That was helpful to think through, actually.
Let's transition to another aspect. We will pose three large questions today. First, the historical question. Which son was intended in Abraham's near sacrifice? Second, a counterfactual. What if the Muslim world adopted a globally standardized astronomical calendar for Eid? Third, an open contemporary question. How do local moon sighting practices shape authority, unity, and logistics? Big question one, the identity of the son. In Jewish and Christian scripture, Genesis 22 centers on Isaac in the binding of Isaac, the Akedah. The Quranic retelling in Surah As-Saffat does not name the son in the key verses, yet classical Muslim exegesis overwhelmingly identifies Ishmael. And within Islamic memory, the title Sacrifice of God is attached accordingly. The angelic intervention and the ram substitute affirm that God does not desire human sacrifice. Obedience is tested, mercy is shown, and a lawful alternative is provided. The festival then ritualizes that substitution via the permissible animals of sacrifice. And, as pilgrims reenact the rejection of Satan through the stoning at Mina, the narrative is embodied communally.
I'm curious about why it's significant which son was intended. Is it mostly about lineage, or is it more about how each community reads its own story of trust and obedience?
It's crucial to understand that identification functions on multiple planes. Theologically, it shapes how communities map the drama of obedience onto their sacred geographies and genealogies. In Islamic tradition, Ishmael aligns more directly with the Arabian context, situating the trial near the lineage associated with Mecca. Liturgically, the story becomes proximate to Hajj rites. Pedagogically, it informs sermons and moral emphasis on filial ascent and prophetic certainty. In simpler terms, the sun's identity threads the narrative into the community's sense of where they come from and what their ritual life is reenacting. Big question 2. Suppose, counterfactually, a globally standardized astronomical calendar were adopted for aid. We can infer several consequences. Positively, uniformity would simplify international planning, school calendars, and media coverage. Families across continents could celebrate on the same civil day. In addition, Hajj-related communications might be easier to coordinate globally, though the on-the-ground Hajj would still be determined by Saudi authorities. On the other hand, a standard calendar would diminish local moon sighting as a devotional practice and as a symbol of decentralized religious authority. The immediacy of waiting for the local sky, hearing the announcement emerge from one's own community, might be replaced by a central calculus. This could feel efficient but thinner to some worshippers.
How would a standardized calendar impact local traditions? Like, would things such as decorated cattle hat, or neighborhood Eidgah prayers, or even the way people do takbir together, change in subtle ways?
Arguably, the immediate customs would persist. People would still gather, adorn animals, and recite the takbir. Yet the upstream rhythm would shift. The anticipation linked to sighting might be replaced by a long published date, making logistics smoother but attenuating the climactic communal moment of confirmation. Authority would tend to centralize, which could standardize pedagogy and reduce date disputes, while also narrowing the ecological diversity of communal timekeeping. To use a musical analogy, one hears the same symphony worldwide, but some local improvisation may be lost. Big question 3. The role of local moon sighting today. Localized sighting foregrounds community agency and religious authority. It yields what I would call a mosaic of observance, in which neighboring countries or even regions within a country may celebrate on different Gregorian dates. Benefits include responsiveness to local testimony and a living connection to the observed sky. Costs include logistical complexity, travel coordination, public holidays, meat distribution schedules, and sometimes disappointed schoolchildren whose cousins celebrated yesterday. This phenomenon is compounded by the lunar calendar's seasonal drift and by differing criteria for accepting regional or foreign reports.
What challenges do these differences present on the ground? I'm thinking about charities trying to deliver meat on time, or families split across borders, or even news outlets deciding when to say Eid Mubarak.
We observe several categories. First, coordination. Charities must stage cold storage and volunteer labor across a moving target. Airlines and buses see surges cluster unpredictably. Second, communication. Institutions must prepare multiple contingencies for announcements. Third, perception. Some may read staggered dates as disunity, while others value the local integrity it preserves. In terms of further inquiry, we could use comparative fieldwork on how differing date regimes affect perceived cohesion and charitable efficiency, experiments with regional coordination agreements, and careful study of how calculated calendars and observational testimony might be hybridized without eroding trust.
Maybe that's something we can come back to later. I like the idea of hybrid models that keep the sky in the picture but help people plan ahead.
To summarize, Eid al-Adha occurs on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, extending through the Tashriq days. It commemorates Abraham's trial and the divine substitution, expressed through prayer, takbir, sacrifice, and structured charity. We considered 3 questions: the identity of the intended sun and its narrative significance, the hypothetical of a global astronomical calendar, and the trade-offs between uniformity and local agency, and the contemporary role of local moon sighting in shaping authority, logistics, and perceptions of unity. For those who wish to extend this study, a natural companion is Eid al-Fitr, the other major festival marking the end of Ramadan.
Eid Mubarak to those celebrating, and thank you for spending time with us.
This then completes our present analysis. Until next time on another lecture.